Americans were now confronted with a dazzling array of choices on the showroom floors. So many that for the first time, people began to view cars the same way that they once viewed clothes or hairdos, as an emblem of their personality.
Ford Thunderbird. Even the name had a ring to it.
A yellow station wagon. A station wagon provides room in the back to carry the lawnmower that's broken.
My boyfriend drove a Chevrolet, and I thought, that's the prettiest car I've ever seen in my life. I felt like a queen in that car.
General Motors had a budget the size of Poland's. Nationwide, every seventh job was related to the automobile industry. The term drive-in became a part of a language. There was a national hotel chain created entirely for road travelers, and a restaurant that spoke exclusively to a newly mobile country. But the most profound effect of the car on American life, the one that actually altered the landscape, was the immense new federal highway system begun in 1956. The largest public works project in history, forever connected American motorists from city to city, from coast to coast.
We used to study those maps, which would show you proposed interstate highway under construction, and then the payoff, completed and open. And we'd get on those interstates and run those great big cars with the big fins on them. It was just wonderful. Just opened up the whole world to us.
What most Americans did not realize was that the freeways had been built with an ulterior motive. The overpasses freedom-loving motorists were driving under were built 15 feet high in order to allow the easy movement of missile systems. President Eisenhower approved the project in part because he wanted military traffic to be able to move easily in the event of a national crisis. In the frivolous 1950s, people lived under the ever-darkening shadow of the Cold War. The U.S. and the Soviet Union each now had massive arsenals at their disposal. The Cold War struggle seemed to be everywhere. In Hungary, when people rebelled against the Russian occupation in 1956, they believed that America would intervene on their behalf.
This was very difficult for the United States. After all, we've been saying the liberation of Hungary is important to the free world and so forth. Well, what were we going to do about it? What the Russians put in there was so much in the way of tanks and troops that this would have been a major war.
It's just heartbreaking. At the height of the crisis, with the Russian tanks on the street below, these kids in Hungary had control of the radio station, and they were broadcasting, SOS, SOS. The tanks are here. We need help. You promised to help us. Where is our help? And there was no answer.
Maybe 10,000 Hungarians died at the altar of the superpower competition, a competition that was taking on apocalyptic overtones. It had taken the Soviets 4 years to duplicate the American success with the atomic bomb. It took only 8 months for them to do the same with the hydrogen bomb.
Oh, there wasn't any doubt that everybody was building them as fast as they could. We've got to build them. We've got to improve them. And keep at it, keep at it, keep at it.
The need to test the new weapons was seen as so urgent that the U.S. government even put its own troops in harm's way.
10 seconds.
Within a few months of the successful Soviet hydrogen test in 1953, several thousand American troops were ordered into trenches in the Arizona desert. One of them was Korean War veteran Reason Wehrheim.
The purpose of it was to test the reaction of the troops to an atomic bomb.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
That shot went off. You see this real bright light. With your hands over your eyes, you could see the bones in your hands. And there's this god-awful noise. It just feels like it's compressing your head. It's so loud. There's a feeling like you're in a vacuum cleaner, like your whole body's being vacuumed. The house that was in front of us was no longer in front of us. It was gone. Of the 2,584 men that were there, there's only 3 of us still alive.
How many Americans were affected altogether can never be fully determined. The fallout from this explosion, known as Shot Simon, reached as far away as New Jersey, among the dirtiest of the 200 above-ground nuclear tests that took place between 1954 and 1958. The same frenzied pace of experimentation was applied to the rocket program. Both superpowers saw them as crucial for the delivery of powerful nuclear payloads. American scientists were not always having much luck.
I saw the rockets that were pointed north go south, and those that were pointed south go north. I saw one go straight up in the air and explode. I saw one go straight up and come straight back down again. But never during those 100 launches did I see anything go right.
On October the 4th, 1957, someone did get it right.
We say, attention, all radio stations of the Soviet Union are broadcasting.
The first artificial Earth satellite in the world has now been created. This first satellite was today successfully launched in the U.S.
This beep, 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 what is it? Sputnik. Sputnik is around the globe. Who did it? We did it. The Soviet Union. First in the space.
And I can remember going out to my backyard one night, looking up at this bright streak going across the sky, and I felt a sudden sinking feeling, one of almost terror.
Now, suddenly, you've got Soviet missiles that can reach into the Dakotas, can hit Chicago.
With a surprise attack possible for the first time, Americans began to look at the sky differently, now as a place from which terror might reign, and to learn some new terms like duck and cover.
I felt
that the threat to America had been increased, that the Soviet Union had upped the ante. While we were playing cops and robbers hide and seek in our backyards and our front yards, there was the gnawing anxiety that it could all end instantaneously.
July 25th, 1959, at a U.S. exhibition in Moscow, Soviet Premier Khrushchev and American Vice President Nixon discussed the relative merits of communism and capitalism.
There are some instances where you may be ahead of us. For example, in the development of the thrust of your rockets for the investigation.
Both of them was built from the same material. They were tough, and they want to show each other that their society is better.
There may be some instances, for example, color television, where we're ahead of you. But
what became known as the kitchen debate seemed to demonstrate America's new insecurity in the world.
You never concede anything.
Sputnik had been a technological Pearl Harbor.
It began a tremendous sense of self-appraisal. Are we falling behind the Russians? What are we teaching our children? I remember Life magazine doing a whole spread on contrasting a Soviet and an American high school. And little Ivana and Ivan were studying rocket physics, and Jim and Sue were bopping in the high school gym. And the clear message of this was, you know, that in 10 or 15 years we would be a client state of the Soviet Union because we were wasting our lives dancing away and dating while these people were working 20-hour days.
Suddenly, an American embrace of intellectualism was being seen on campuses, in libraries,
from New York City, Mr.
and on new television quiz shows, including 21.
She's the only one I can remember.
Charles Van Doren was a contestant. He was the son of a celebrated professor.
Eva Marie Saint.
Right, you had 10 points.
He performed so brilliantly that he became a national celebrity.
Did he behead Captain Howard?
He did. You got 18 points.
Every day he received hundreds of letters telling him he was America's hope for a more cerebral future. It was a false hope. In November 1959, Van Doren testified that he had been given answers to the questions he'd been asked. The show's producers had stage managed the contest in an effort to win ratings.
It was another letdown. Back then, you believed people. You believed people when they told you something, you accepted it as face value. And here on television, they would lie to you.
The medium had exposed its ugly side for all to witness. In the decade to come, Americans would discover that television was not the only beloved institution that wasn't quite what it seemed. As the 50s gave way to the 60s, a new generation became a force in popular culture and in politics. That's on the next episode of The Century, America's Time. I'm Peter Jennings. We hope you'll join us.